News 8 honors our veterans with this special presentation, hosted by Adam Chodak and Maureen McGuire.
Good evening. Welcome to our Veterans Voices special report, honoring those who have served our country. We begin with a man who went from army to artist and is right here in our area, creating works of art that sell for hundreds of dollars.
His journey to his dream career didn't happen overnight. It all started at a time when he had to suppress much of his true self. Christian Garzon introduces us to former Army Sergeant John Arthurs.
John Arthurs left high school and joined the Army out of Pittsburgh in the early 80s. He started his service as an 11 Bravo, an infantryman. But it was his experience in the restaurant industry that had the Army tapping into his culinary gifts to feed hundreds of troops daily.
So they changed my MOS. And they sent me to school, and I went to cooking school.
Arthurs was stationed in Germany, then back to the U.S., then back to Europe. His kitchen skills in high demand.
I took my position as a cook very seriously.
It was this journey into meal making that let Arthurs first explore his creative side, usually stifled in the military. Other parts of him had to be kept quiet as well.
I think they knew that I was gay, but I was doing my job. I had several instances where I had actual fistfights.
Arthurs left the Army honorably, going to school in Chicago and other places for art, eventually ending up in Rochester.
I've always been interested in art, even as a child. So I just started to create.
Arthurs says art is therapeutic for him, and he doesn't limit himself to one method or genre. He has paintings, vases, sculptures all around him. Arthurs says the Veterans Outreach Center in the city gave him a safe place to further his creative career.
I met some fabulous folks over there.
Through it all, he says he'll never forget his Army roots and his service to the nation. It gave him a solid canvas to start his professional life and get him to where he is now.
If I could do it all over again, I would do it. There's no doubt in my mind.
Thank you, Christian. Arthurs also had a career as a banker, and he worked for years at an AIDS organization. Our local World War II vets number fewer every year.
The greatest generation, and I was able to talk with one virtually who served within a very special section of the Marines. Judd Wexler joined the fight, signing up to serve during World War II for the same reason so many had given in past wars. Why did you get into the Marines?
I wanted to get away from the civilian life. I wanted to do something active, something exciting, something that I would remember a long time. And that's what I did.
He found that excitement and more in the South Pacific, taking such intense fire in one exchange that when he hit the floor at one point, his fellow Marines thought he had been shot.
My best buddy we were very close together. He picked me up off the floor. My best buddy, he thought I was hit. And he grabbed one foot and another foot, and he threw me into the ambulance.
A memory Wexler now laughs at, but there's one he does not. He was part of an experimental Marine unit that used dogs in the field, the War Dog program. Wexler remembers the day his dog fell.
And I saw my dog running. And then I saw my dog quit running. I saw him go down. I saw he had part of it. And that's the way he ended. He got hit 3 times. And he never admitted he got hit. He just stopped doing what he was doing, stayed down. They picked him up, put him in the tub, and away he went.
Life back home followed that classic path: education, family, and a job, working as a pharmacist for decades.
I was fairly good with it, and I had a lot of friends that were in it, and I liked it. I worked for it. I worked almost 6 years for it. It made me a good living.
And so well deserved. Mr. Wexler, we salute you. I want to thank the folks at Jewish Senior Life for helping me conduct this interview. Not easy in these times with the COVID restrictions in place.
Coming up, how veterans are participating in the fight against COVID-19 and the ongoing search for a vaccine.
We now return to a News 8 special presentation of Veterans Voices.
Welcome back. With COVID-19 cases on the rise once again, a group of veterans is doing all they can to help.
They're working with researchers on the front lines as they work to create a vaccine. Roosevelt Leftwich reports from Cleveland.
I felt great. I would never know that I got a shot.
It is the answer to the question that Desmond Kennedy gets anywhere from 8 to 800 times a day. He's one of a large group of veterans at the Louis Stokes Cleveland VA Medical Center who has volunteered to test a potential vaccine for COVID-19.
It's like everyone asks me, how do you feel? How do you feel? Do you feel any side effects? I'm like, well, it's a vaccine. I shouldn't feel any side effects. If I'm feeling side effects, something's wrong. But I feel great.
Not everyone would do this, but Desmond was one of the first to volunteer. He says he's always wanted to help others in his life. He joined the Army to serve his country and volunteered to become a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne. And he volunteered for combat tours in both Iraq and Afghanistan. And in civilian life, Desmond gives blood every 60 days and is a volunteer with many community groups. So volunteering to take part in the Pfizer vaccine test was, well, a no-brainer. He says you're taught in the military to face adversity head-on. And he and other veterans see their participation in this as a way to continue their service in a time of adversity.
We have to do what we can to help each other get through this. You know, the minimum is not always going to be sufficient enough to get us through this. So if you can do a little bit extra, just do a little bit extra.
Veterans at the Cleveland VA are part of one of the largest vaccine trials that's currently underway. The Pfizer trial is being led by doctors Curtis Nonsky, Federico Perez, and Margaret Tipton, and it involves participants getting about 2 shots 3 weeks apart. It also means weeks of follow-up blood draws and examinations. And the volunteers are young and old, different races, different sexes, and different levels of health. And their willingness to be a part of this will provide crucial information that could save many lives down the line.
We are extremely diverse. Many of the men and women that have served the military come from a lot of different backgrounds. And this is also very important for vaccine administration to have a good population represented in the results. And in the spirit that made them serve in the military, they come forth to volunteer to help their co-veterans.
But if you're a soldier, a sailor, or Marine, that's kind of what you've always done. For a former paratrooper like Desmond, a shot in the arm, well, that's nothing. But it's what will be gained from his shot and the hundreds of others involved in this trial that they hope will make the difference for the country that they will continue to always serve.
Ever since this began, I've been a big proponent of doing what we can to help mitigate it. The washing the hands, the mask, the social distancing. So when this came up, I said, this is another thing that I can do, so I'm going to do it.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Roosevelt Leftwich.
In our next Veterans Voices segment, we meet a Marine who fell on tough times downstate. He says eventually coming to this region saved his life.
Gary Caldwell had to strip away the mental barriers he had in place since boot camp before getting the courage to ask for help. He's now thriving thanks to a local veterans organization. Christian Garzon has more.
Growing up in Washington, D.C., Gary Caldwell says he always wanted to break away, see the U.S. and the world.
I also knew that I wanted to be a Marine. 2 weeks after graduating high school, I was in Marine Corps boot camp, wondering what I had gotten myself into.
Caldwell became an 0341 infantry mortarman. He served from 1982 to 1985 in Hawaii and did cruises through the Mediterranean Sea. He also traveled through Asia, helping to train South Korean soldiers and down under with Australian forces.
So, you know, those experiences were great.
Caldwell left honorably as a corporal. He ended up in the Bronx working as a drug abuse case manager for a nonprofit until 2017.
Well, I had run into some rough times. You know, I had lost my job due to some personal issues, and I didn't know where to turn.
Homeless, Caldwell eventually turned to the VA in New York City.
For a long time, because I was this big bad Marine that, I didn't need help.
He was assisted for a while, but when COVID hit, he and other veterans were transported to the Canandaigua VA. While in quarantine, he learned of the Veterans Outreach Center here in Rochester.
I would talk to friends and stuff, and they told me, listen, you should just stay up there, start new, start fresh.
Caldwell just getting a new apartment on Mount Hope. He says this new level of stability essential thanks to the VOC. Caldwell says this move saved his life and he's happy to stay. The air, he says, is fresher in Rochester anyways.
I just feel the difference living up here and just being up here and connected with the veterans.
Thanks, Christian. Caldwell says he hopes to restart his career here as a case manager soon.
Coming up, they were our nation's very first veterans. How those who fought in the Revolutionary War are being honored today.
We now return to a News 8 special presentation of Veterans Voices.
A sailor who served off the coast of Somalia and here in the National Guard now works in downtown Rochester, interacting with people there every day.
Christian Garzon highlights one ex-service member who owes his career restart to a critical support system in the community.
Chandrell Rutley started his military journey as an undesignated airman on USS New Orleans in San Diego. He deployed in 1993 to Somalia, their mission to assist ground and air forces there during Operation Restore Hope.
I left the Navy and joined the Army here back in Rochester, and I was an 88 mic truck driver.
Rutley elaborates on that service switch.
Because my wife, she didn't like me being out at sea too much.
While serving with the National Guard in Rochester, Rutley turned to the Veterans Outreach Center to help look for a full-time job. They began by getting him his security license.
They also helped me with obtaining my armed guard license.
A 47-hour course, both in class and on the range, all thanks to the center here.
I didn't know too much about the programs. I just gave them a call and they helped me out.
Now, Rutley is a security supervisor at the Regional Transit Center on Clinton Ave in Rochester. Rutley says he still in a way wears the uniform and continues to serve.
Down at the transit, we interact with the community every day. It feels good to help the community out.
He says the career is fitting and the military gave him many of the skills needed for the job. But what he misses most from his days in the service are the guys and the camaraderie.
A lot of good times, a lot of sleepless times, but we had a good time.
Rutley says if you're a veteran and looking for some direction in life or career, reach out to the VOC.
It's a great source for veterans. If you don't know about it, you should call down and learn what programs they have to offer.
Christian, thank you. And if you'd like to know more about the VOC, just find this story over at rochesterfirst.com. There would not be a Veterans Day if not for our country's very first veterans.
We're talking about all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Kyrie Stewart tells us about a special program to honor them.
The men and women that were fighting during the Revolutionary War are America's first veterans. And that generation needs to be remembered for their service and sacrifice too.
Matt Skick is the associate curator of the Museum of the American Revolution in Old City. The museum is hosting several events to honor veterans. It includes virtual lectures, performances, and even pop-up talks featuring veterans from the Revolution, such as this guy, George Fishley.
He served at the Valley Forge Winter Encampment of 1777 and 1778, not too far away from Philadelphia.
Believe it or not, this is an actual photograph of one of our country's first veterans.
This type of photograph allows you to look at the face of someone who served almost 250 years ago.
As you weave your way through the exhibits, you'll find artifacts and learn the untold stories of America's first veterans, such as this woman, Deborah Sampson. Did you know that she was probably one of our country's first female veterans? She disguised herself as a man to fight in the Continental Army.
At the end of the war, she was honorably discharged after she was discovered to be a woman, and went on a speaking tour after the war to tell her stories about her service during the Revolutionary War.
And of course, you can't talk about Veterans Day without thinking about the flag they fought for. But it looked very different more than 200 years ago. These are two flags that soldiers used during the war. One represents the ties America had to Great Britain, and the other represents the colonies.
And it seemed to have been a union originally, but that was taken up, cut up, and created into stripes. 6 on this side, 7 on the other. 6 plus 7 is 13, representing the 13 new United States of America.
More than 200 years later, the flag looks a lot different, but the mission of the men and women who fought for our country remains the same. Skick hopes this encourages all Americans to always remember the ones who fought, no matter how long ago they fought.
These first veterans of the United States are a generation that set the tone for future generations about what it meant to be a great public servant in this country and what virtue means.
That was Kyrie Stewart reporting. You can explore the Museum of the American Revolution from the comfort of your computer at amrevmuseum.org.
Coming up next, a trailblazer right here in our community, how one remarkable woman continues to serve those who served our country.
We now return to a News 8 special presentation of Veterans Voices.
We turn now to a trailblazer for women in the military who lives right here in our area.
At the height of the Vietnam era and the Cold War, Judy Leone was one of the first females in the service to be a criminal investigator. Christian Garzon brings us her story and tells us how decades later, she continues to serve those who served.
Judy Leone's career in the Army started in September 1968. She ended up at Fort Sheridan in Chicago, working as an office manager with an Army Criminal Investigations Unit. She later became a criminal investigator, one of the first females in the service to hold that position, spending most of her time in West Germany.
Well, I was the only one in Germany. I was the only one in Europe. We did drug investigations, 2 murders.
Leone says she did dozens and dozens of cases and worked with all branches of the military. It was work that helped keep American troops in Germany safe, but also hold them accountable. And working as a woman in uniform, Leone says no surprise, she worked with men constantly, but the tensions you might be imagining just weren't there. Her work environment ahead of its time. General George Patton IV even calling her into his office to recognize her work.
And they were very respectful. They really were. I have to say that they respected me as a criminal investigator.
Depending what demographic figures you look at, the military's ranks are about 15% female today. Leone says she sees herself as a trailblazer for women in the military. She helped usher local women into the service, some of them making careers and retiring.
Makes me feel old, but yeah.
After leaving the service in 1972, Leone earned a master's degree in theology and worked for the Diocese of Rochester for 40 years. She's now at the Veterans Outreach Center, helping veterans obtain permanent housing. She says her Army enlistment, always a source of strength for herself and others.
It helped me in the fact that it allowed me to be who I am. It opened doors to let me know that I could do anything I wanted to do.
Her message for women, especially in 2020, anything is possible.
But I think it's very important that our women step forward and they know that they're not, below anybody.
For even more on Judy's career and for more information on the Veterans Outreach Center, head over to rochesterfirst.com. We want to thank you for watching tonight.
News 8 tells veteran stories year-round, and you can find them in the Veterans Voices section at rochesterfirst.com.